Welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am Allison K. Dagny, your emotional abuse recovery mentor, subconscious healing expert, and best-selling author. If you've ever walked away from a conversation and then spent hours afterwards replaying every word that you said, wondering if you sounded stupid or wondering if you offended somebody, maybe they misunderstood you, or you're wondering if they're upset with you, then this episode is for you. So today we are going to be talking about why so many survivors of emotional abuse get trapped in this habit, this very exhausting habit of mentally reviewing conversations and situations long after they've ended. So we're going to talk about why this happens, what your brain is actually trying to accomplish when it does this, the subconscious beliefs that keep the cycle going, and how to begin breaking free from it. So by the end of this episode, I really want you to understand what feels like overthinking is often something so much deeper. And when you understand what's actually driving the behavior, you can finally begin to change it. So before we jump in, I do want to explain for those of you who might just be tuning in for the first time that my focus is to help survivors of emotional abuse overcome the things that they've experienced, the things that other people have done to them in the past. And the goal here is to get to the root, not to cope, not to just band-aid, to actually do things that will change you for good. So I want you to think about the last time that someone either didn't text you back right away, or maybe they gave a little distance, or were quieter than normal, or maybe they looked at you very confused while you were talking and you picked up on those little micro expressions. Or maybe they were just straight up disagreeing with you, or maybe you were having an argument or combative. It could be just distance in general. So I want you to think about how much time you spent then afterwards trying to figure out what happened or what went wrong, okay? And usually you're blaming yourself. Usually you're thinking you did something wrong, okay? How many stories did your brain actually come up with? How many possible explanations did you actually consider? And how many times did you mentally replay either what you said, what they said? Maybe you were like combing through all of the things and thinking, oh, maybe this is what they didn't like, or maybe I was too aggressive, or maybe I didn't explain myself properly, or maybe I should have said more than what I did. So here's the question I really want you to consider. What if the reason that you're replaying these conversations isn't just because you're an overthinker? What if you're replaying it because somewhere along the way you began to learn that other people's feelings are your responsibility? And if you have never heard this before, I want you to sit with this for a moment, because I've said this to many of my clients and they look at me like a deer in headlights. Other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Just want you to let that sink in. Okay? So overthinking and ruminating, overanalyzing, all of this stuff, right, that happens to survivors is pretty automatic. But the reason it's automatic is because you unconsciously established this habit for yourself. And it's not like you did it on purpose, okay? So I need to be really clear about that. The way that the brain works is that if you think about something enough times, your brain steps up and automates that for you. It's to make life easier for you, right? If you are focused on something and you think about it a lot, your brain creates an automation so that you don't have to consciously think about it. So if these things have happened to you, there's nothing wrong with you. This is just the way the brain is wired. So what I see over and over again with clients and people in my community is that they're actually not reviewing the conversation for information. What they're actually looking for is danger, or areas that maybe someone was upset Because, and here's why, for many survivors, if someone was upset with you, it's not just about being uncomfortable, it's about being unsafe. So let me give you an example. If you grew up in a household and your mother was, let's say, highly narcissistic, or your father was highly narcissistic, maybe they caused you to walk eggshells a lot, and so you became really, really good at identifying their moods. And so if they were in a good mood, you felt safer. And if they were in a bad mood, you felt scared or unsafe. So we take this into all of our relationships to protect ourselves. So when you're thinking about these things, you're reviewing the conversations, you're trying to fill in the gaps of missing information, it's because you're scanning for danger. Is this safe? Is this unsafe? And like I said, if you grew up living in a family like this, or even like as an adult with emotionally abusive partners, things like that, what that means is you have to be really good at figuring out the mood that someone's in. So you start to notice if their tone has shifted, if their facial expressions have changed, if they sighed a little heavier than normal, if they are, stomping around or slamming doors or being, giving you the silent treatment, maybe criticizing a little too hard or a little extra than they normally would, right? So you're just becoming this forecaster of what's going to happen based on how somebody is showing up. And it isn't like that you want to do this, it's just your nervous system has learned that this is necessary for you to stay safe. So I want to talk about a belief, like a common subconscious belief that a lot of people carry. And I want to help you shift this because a lot of people think that if someone is upset, I need to figure out why, or I need to make them feel better, or I need to change something so that they're not upset anymore. Why are we doing this? Because if they're upset, we don't feel safe. So we try to make the other person feel better. We go out of our way to do something nice for them, or we maybe ask questions or pull away and give them some space or whatever that is, because if somebody's upset, we got to figure out why and we got to change it, okay? But as I said before, earlier on, you are not responsible for other people's emotions, okay? So what if you don't need to figure out why? What if you don't need to fix it? Okay, I want you to imagine walking through a grocery store and looking at the people around you and noticing that someone nearby looks really frustrated, right? They're really frustrated. Do you make the immediate assumption that you need to solve their frustration? You need to intervene. You need to ask them what's wrong. You need to try to help them, right? Of course you don't. I mean, some people might do that, like, oh, did you need some help finding something or whatever? But let's say they look reasonably upset and frustrated. Maybe they're on a phone call that doesn't have anything to do with the grocery store, right? Are you going to jump in and try to resolve it? No. Okay? Might not even be safe to do that in some cases, but survivors of abuse do this with the people that are closest to them. And the moment that something is uncomfortable, then the brain starts looking for answers. So I want to challenge you on this, like, oh, I need to figure out why, or I need to make them feel better, or I need to make them happy. Is that true? Are you just uncomfortable with their discomfort? Now, I will say, and I always have to put this in here, if someone is in your life, they're angry, they're upset, they're being physically abusive, throwing things, basically having like an adult tantrum, right? You may need to do something in order to keep yourself safe. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to keep yourself safe. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying if you take on their emotional responsibility inside of yourself, then not only are you responsible for your feelings, you're also responsible for someone else's, right? Who's really responsible for their own emotions? The person who's feeling them. That is who is responsible for their feelings. This is really hard to separate out for survivors. I know because I've experienced this myself. When other people get upset, it's like, oh no, I need to fix this. I need to make sure they're okay. I need to, soften this or mitigate it or make things better. I get that. But the reality is you do not have to do that. That is not your responsibility. And I'm going to give you permission right now. I have to do this to my clients all the time. And like I said, they look at me like, oh my gosh, no one's ever told me that. If you were raised like this, or you've used this as a survival or trauma adaptation to protect yourself, of course you're going to carry it into other relationships. Your boss gets mad. Oh, now I have to make sure my boss is happy. Oh, my coworker, my neighbor, my friends, my family, my kids, whatever, right? Like, oh, I've got to make everything better. I've got to jump in. I've got to resolve things. I got to fix things. No. Quick pause here. If you are listening to this and you're nodding along like, yep, this is me, and you're ready to actually shift this and not just keep managing and coping, you can apply for a free root cause call using the link in the show notes. On that call, we're going to look at where you're at right now, where you want to be emotionally, and start uncovering what is actually in the way. And then I'm going to give you my recommendations and point you in the right direction if any of my programs might feel like a fit. And if it's aligned, we'll move forward. If not, you still leave with some clarity. All right, now let's get back to the episode. You do not, okay? So, and this is something too that I think is really important for people to know, is that when people come to me thinking that their problem is overthinking, right? Overthinking and rumination is the umbrella, right, over everything else underneath it, right? So you could overthink what you said in a conversation to a friend, or you could overthink the regret from 10 years ago. You could overthink why someone hasn't returned a phone call, or you could overthink why you did something that you wish you had not done. Okay, so rumination and overthinking is this like, is an umbrella, right? Which underneath of it, there's all these other things that you could be doing it. But the real thing is that rumination and overthinking are not the root of this, okay? The root is beginning with a belief and a belief system, emotional patterns, nervous system responses, or even these survival strategies that you've used that are operating underneath the behavior of ruminating, the behavior of overthinking, because these are behaviors, these are habits that your brain has installed for you. So when we get to the root, then the symptoms start to make sense. And this is why I call my consultations root cause calls, because we're getting to the root. I'm helping you figure out, like, what is it that is causing you to do this so much? Because here's the other thing. You could just be really down about yourself. Like, why am I not good enough? Why am I broken? Why can't I do anything right? There's something wrong with me. Like, you ruminate over that, right? So the root is not like the ruminating, oh, I'm ruminating. That's the symptom, okay? That's the symptom of something deeper beneath the surface. And if you want help with this and identifying your own patterns, then you can go on my website and apply for one of these free root cause calls. There's also a link in my show notes here. Okay, so when you have this belief, right, that, and maybe you don't even know you have it, but you've been trained to think or conditioned to think that you are responsible for how other people feel. Let me tell you where this comes from, okay? A lot of people have this belief, okay? If you are, let's say, just sitting in your home, and let's say someone comes storming through, like a family member or a child or whatever, that comes storming through, you're trying to have a peaceful moment, and they're just, like a little tornado coming through the house. If you believe that you can't have peace unless other people show up how you think they should, then who really has the power over how you feel? They do, right? So if my ex is always doing things to upset me, and always doing things to bother me, and always doing things to hurt me, and telling the kids lies, and going on a smear campaign, right? If I believe that the only way that I can have peace is if he stops doing those things, then I am forever at the mercy and control of him. Hell no. I do not want that for my life. I am in control of how I feel. And I know some of you are like, wait, what? How do you get there? This is what I do. This is how I help women every single day. This is how I change my life. Because I am responsible for how I feel. And you change how you feel based on what you think about. So if my brain goes, these people should not be bothering me. These people should mind their own business. These people shouldn't hurt me and talk bad about me, and they should be doing this and they should be doing that, right? Well, my belief system, what I just laid out, is disagreeing with what's actually happening in reality. Because the facts are, I can influence other people. I can say, here's what I would do in that situation, or here's how I would show up in that situation if it was really, something you could influence, right? I'm not influencing my ex-husband, of course. I'm not influencing him. So if I can't even influence him, and I can't change him, and I can't make him be different, but I'm still always upset by what he does, he's in control of me and how I feel. And that's not okay with me. That is not okay with me. There's a reason people do this. And the one thing that I will ask you to think about is, why would you want somebody else to be responsible for how you feel? And really think about it. Like, what benefit do you get from that? And some people are like, I don't get any benefit from that. There's no benefit. I don't want people in control of how I feel. Well, but you're allowing them to be, so you must get some benefit from it. And here, I'll share one with you. And I'm not saying this is yours, but I hear these things all the time talking to my clients, and I have just libraries full of beliefs, libraries full of reasons for resistance and things like that. So one reason that you might resist is because if other people are in control of your emotions and not you, then you don't really have to do the hard work. You can just wait around and expect them to change, and you don't have to do anything, right? If you flip it and you say, well, I don't really want them in control of how I feel, so that means I'm actually going to have to do the work and the practice to change my thoughts, put these things into practice, be aware all the time, right? Do the hard healing work. But I'm telling you, it's rewarding. It's very rewarding to not be affected, to be totally indifferent is magical. It's a magical place to live, okay? So why do you think that your brain keeps opening these, I don't even want to call them conversations, but when you had some sort of gap in information, like the person didn't text you right away, or they gave you a weird look and you're trying to figure it out, or they didn't invite you to a party, whatever it is, right? So why do you think your brain keeps going back to these conversations? Here is why. Because your brain thinks it's solving a problem. It thinks this is productive. It thinks it's useful to you. The problem is that the problem doesn't actually belong to you. Okay? So most survivors are trying to answer these questions. Did I upset them? Are they angry with me? Do they still like me? Do they still want to be my friend? Did I disappoint them? Did I maybe not explain myself well enough? Did I say something wrong? Should I reach out again? Should I fix this? Right? So if you're hearing these thoughts and you're like, oh, I've said that before. That's normal. That is very normal. But your brain thinks it's solving a problem by asking all these questions and trying to find the solution. But notice what all of these things have in common. What they're doing is they're focusing on managing someone else's emotional experience. Why can't we just let people have their feelings? Why do we have to fix it? Why do we have to make sure that they're okay? Because if you believe that you have to do that, right? Let's say there is a gap. I use a text example because I feel like it's very common. People who don't hear back from somebody right away in a text or something, and they're used to hearing back from them right away. Well, if you start thinking about all the ways, oh, what did I say? And maybe they're mad or da-da-da. You fill in all the gaps, right, with your imagination because you don't know. You don't have a clue. Part of this is you trying to make sure that the other person is okay because you believe it's something that you have done. But why can't you just let them have whatever experience that they're having? What if they are angry? What if they are disappointed? Right? You're going, oh, well, they shouldn't be disappointed. Oh, they shouldn't be angry. I should fix this. I should make them okay. We need to have this relationship. We need to come together, right? These are all beliefs, okay? When I have conversations with my clients, I am taking notes like a maniac. I'm like writing, because I can hear all the beliefs. I'm like, oh, there's one. Then I have a 4-step tool that I teach my clients so that they can start to reprogram their brains. So that within, a couple of months, they're indifferent, they're unaffected, they're not ruminating. They're like, oh, well, it is what it is, right? I want to share a metaphor with you. I want you to imagine spending your life sitting behind a customer service desk, but it's an emotional customer service desk, okay? Big sign over the head, emotional customer service, okay? And every time somebody feels disappointed, they're bringing it to your desk. And they feel frustrated, they're bringing it to your desk. They feel confused, they're bringing it back to you. What happens to you over time is that you start believing that every time somebody complains about their feelings or their emotions, that you have to attend to it. This is a problem, right? Healthy relationships do not require you to manage everyone else's emotional experience. Adults are allowed to have feelings, okay? Children are allowed to have feelings, even uncomfortable ones. So if you think about a child who's having a tantrum, right? If you're a parent, you understand this. Child is having a tantrum, or maybe you're a teacher or you have nieces, nephews, grandkids, whatever. If that child is freaking out, you might want to make them feel better, but let's say the tantrum is because they can't run out into the street. They can't go play in the street where traffic is. As a parent, you're like, this is for your safety. I'm not letting you do this. And they're freaking out and they're having a full-on meltdown. As a parent, you don't think oh my gosh, I have to, are you okay? And what's the matter? And let me try to fix it for you. And do you want to go? Maybe I can hold your hand in the street and we can walk through the street together and it'll be safer. No. You dissociate your feelings from theirs. You're like, okay, I get that they don't understand this. I get they have their feelings, their emotions. They're not happy. They're angry. They're sad, whatever, that they can't play in the street. But you're not taking that on. Okay, so I know it's different for children and adults, especially if you've been emotionally abused and you've been conditioned to believe that, yeah, I've got to work through other people's feelings. You don't. Okay? I'm going to keep repeating this. You are not responsible for other people's feelings. Now, here's where this gets maybe a little bit uncomfortable for you. You're not responsible for other people's feelings, but guess what? They are not responsible for yours either. This is where we have to take deep accountability as the amazing humans that we are and the amazing humans that we want to be, right? So if you're like, well, if you had not done that, then I wouldn't be angry. No. You get to choose how you feel based on what you think and believe, right? So if we're blaming other people's behavior on how, saying we feel that way because they acted that way, yeah, the situation caused a trigger in you. It caused you to think something, and then when you thought that thing that happened in a millisecond, then you felt the feeling. It feels like it's much faster than that, but most people don't realize there are subconscious beliefs at work every single minute of the day. So if I'm recording this podcast and let's say one of my kids bursts in through the door, I could get angry immediately. Why am I angry immediately? Not because they burst through the door, because I believe they should not burst through the door. I believe they should be quiet. I believe they should be respectful. I believe that they should be aware of what's happening inside of my office, right? And then if they're not, then reality is disagreeing with what I believe, and so I would get upset. Now, what if I believe something different? What if I believe my kids are my number one priority, and if they need to burst in, then they need to burst in, and I'll just have to edit my podcast? Do you think I'm going to get angry then if they burst in? No, I'm not. So it's all based on what you believe. I can't stress this enough. Okay, so if my kid's bursting in, is making me angry, I have to look at why that is. What am I believing to be true? Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that if someone does something to you and hurts you, that you shouldn't be angry about it, or you shouldn't be sad, or you shouldn't have a feeling. No, I'm not saying that at all. You absolutely need to honor your feelings and feel them, okay? But the next layer of healing is, if I want to be at peace, if that's the priority, if I want to be chill, if I want to be indifferent, if I don't want to have an emotional negative reaction, then I got to check my beliefs every single time. And this is a practice, and this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's just not. So I want to talk about another belief here that a lot of people carry, which is, if someone is upset with me, then I've done something wrong. And they immediately put that back on themselves. Why are we doing this? Right? Oh, well, I want to take accountability, and I want to be a good person, and I want to make sure that, if I did something wrong, that I can change and I can be better. Okay, fine. That's cool, right? We're listening to the Be a Better You podcast. I want to be better too, okay? But I don't automatically assume that if somebody's upset with me that I did something wrong. If they tell me I did something wrong, that's very different than me just making that assumption, right? If someone is upset, could it possibly be something else? Could it be that they've had a really, really long, exhausting, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day? Could that be? And then they get to me and now they're upset, right? Maybe they're still upset with something I did, but maybe they wouldn't have been that way if they hadn't had that horrible day. Okay? So this is about shifting your perspective and not immediately assigning blame to yourself. And again, if you did something wrong, fine, we can own that, we can take accountability, we can apologize, all the things. But we have to get out of this habit of immediately assuming that, oh, well, I did something wrong. Oh, well, I must have said something wrong. And then ruminating on that and creating this whole story in your brain about it. Because somebody can be upset with you because you set a boundary. That doesn't mean you did something wrong, right? Someone can be upset because you said no. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. Someone could be upset because they didn't get what they wanted. Does that mean you did something wrong? No. Right? People can be upset for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they misunderstood you, right? So how people react, their emotional reaction is just information to you. And if you can be an observer instead of a reactor, you're going to feel a lot better. So if you are somebody who immediately starts these overthinking or ruminating spirals, oh, they're upset with me, it must be me, I really need you to pause on that, and I really need you to inspect that. Okay? Because typically what happens at that point is your behavior will follow. So you might be really eager to repair a relationship. You might be calling the person a lot. You might be reaching out a lot, and they might be like, whoa, what is happening? Why are you acting like this, right? Because your behaviors are dictated by how you feel and what you believe. So you're going to do whatever is in alignment with that. So before you take action, I want you to really consider, is this true? What else could be possible? And shifting out of that. Okay. Ruminating and overthinking is just your way of trying to get clarity, certainty, information, and to close that gap of missing info, okay? So your brain really just starts to think things like, well, if I can figure this out, and if I have the answers, then I'll feel better, or I'll feel safe, or I'll feel relief. But what if that certainty never comes? What happens next? The brain keeps looping because you don't have the answer. It's I don't have it, so I must keep digging for it and looking for it. And then you never get it because you don't have an answer, so you're just latching onto all these different things, and you have no idea what's actually true. So then the conversation comes in again, and you're dissecting what you said, and you're looking back at all the text messages or trying to remember all the words of the conversation. Did I say this versus did I say that? Oh, maybe I stuck my foot in my mouth. Maybe they didn't like that I brought that up, right? It happens over and over and over again. This has nothing to do with a personal flaw in you. This is literally a program that has been installed in your brain. But you can change those programs, and that's the beauty of it. Okay? So the conversation might even be over. The person didn't respond back to you in the text, so it's just the end of that text exchange or email, or maybe they just walked out the door. Who the heck knows? I don't know, right? It's over. But your nervous system hasn't gotten the message. Your nervous system's like, what's going on? I need this information, blah, 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 right? So the way to get out of this is to start to shift your subconscious beliefs. If you keep operating on the same old belief system, you're going to keep feeling the same way and keep behaving the same way. So if you never change what you're thinking and what you're believing and those systems of beliefs that are installed inside of you, you're going to be the same as you always were. You will continue to ruminate. You will continue to think these things. You will continue the same behaviors and the same feelings, and they will just be like clockwork. You don't even have to like tell yourself to do it, because it's just going to happen automatically. And that's why most people don't understand this, but mindset work is great, but it often is not enough, because you can't just like logic your way out of an activated nervous system loop like this. So if you personally have been stuck in these same patterns and you're replaying these things, and it's been months or years or days or weeks, there's usually something deeper that's driving this. And that's what we can uncover in my consultation during a root cause call, and I can help you understand where you are getting stuck in these loops, okay? And not just what you're doing, because you already know. You already know, I think about it when I wake up. I think about it when I go to sleep. I think about it when my friends aren't there. I think about it, if I'm sitting in the car in traffic, like, you know you're doing it, okay? We want to figure out how to stop doing it. And I know how to do that. That's what my expertise is, okay? So a powerful question that you can ask yourself is, what if I allowed other people to have their feelings without making those feelings my responsibility? And then maybe on a piece of paper, write down what comes up. What are you thinking about would be like a consequence to this? If you would let people have their feelings without making them your responsibility to change, to intervene, to do anything, what is that consequence? There's probably a lot. So I would get that paper out and I would write them down. Because for a lot of people, this is an uncomfortable place to be. That's why we do it, because we're uncomfortable with it. So we want to get rid of the discomfort. I write about this in my book. Leaning into Discomfort is a chapter in Hack Your Mind, Heal Your Heart. If you haven't gotten this book, I highly recommend it. It talks about all these things that we go through in the podcast, but it's like a manual, and every chapter has something that you can learn. But leaning into discomfort is so important, because most of us want to avoid it, right? We want to avoid anything that's uncomfortable. If we're hungry, we get food. We have a rock in our shoe, we take it out, right? We have an itch, we scratch it. What if we just sat with it? What if we just dealt with it, okay? This isn't about pushing yourself into things that are harmful for you, right? This is about growth. This is about expanding your capacity for discomfort. And this is really freeing. And this is where you can actually start to make a lot of shifts, because when you can sit in that discomfort, you get a lot of insight and realization that you've otherwise just kept avoiding. Okay, so today we talked about why a lot of survivors will replay conversations, try to find information in those micro expressions, or understanding people's behaviors, or understanding your own behaviors and why you did something, or maybe you're blaming yourself. Mostly way after it's over, okay? That's where we get stuck in these ruminating loops. And we talked about how emotional abuse often trains people to become hypervigilant to other people's moods and emotional states, so that you're always like worried about, oh, they're feeling this, they're feeling that, now I need to fix it. But you don't have to fix it. I want to remind you that rumination is often less about just these thinking loops and looking for danger and trying to feel safe. It's way more about what's underneath of that. Okay? And I also want to remind you that other people's feelings are not your responsibility, and your feelings are not other people's responsibility. Right? We're all responsible for our own feelings. And we cannot change other people's behaviors. We cannot make other people be different. So the power becomes, oh, that's inside of me. I have to change that on my own. Okay? And one last thing is that it's possible that someone else's emotions, their emotional reactions, their behaviors does not automatically mean that you have done something wrong. Okay? If somebody wants to communicate and tell you you did something wrong, or that you hurt their feelings, or that they didn't like this behavior, or you broke a boundary or whatever, then that's fine. But this immediate knee-jerk reaction to believing that you've done something wrong just because of someone else's feelings is not always true. So this is something to be aware of. So if this episode resonated with you and you are tired of constantly replaying these conversations or questioning yourself or being in that hypervigilant state and like feeling responsible for other people's emotions, these emotions that aren't yours, that you do not have to take care of or change, I would really encourage you to apply for one of those free consultations, the root cause call. Because what I'm going to help you do is take a look at the patterns underneath the pattern and uncover what's actually keeping you in these loops. And then I can help you if you decide to work with me or you decide to invest in any of my programs. You will learn exactly how to change this. You'll find the link in the show notes if you're interested. And I just want to say thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And I want to encourage you to keep showing up for yourself. Keep listening to this podcast. Share it with other people. Take notes. Go back and listen to old episodes. It will help you to keep healing and keep becoming the version of you that feels peaceful, confident, and free. I'll talk to you next week.